Soundbites Allowed, and I am your host, Michael Voss. And it looks like everything is coming across fine at the moment. Last couple of weeks, we've been having a lot of problems with Facebook and being able to get that out. Excuse me. Excuse me about that. As I was mentioning, we've had some troubles with Facebook, so I apologize for anyone who's watching on Facebook. They have occasionally crashed the system. We'll do our best. On YouTube, seems to be coming across perfectly fine, so we're going to go forward with that. I'm your host, Michael Voss, as I mentioned, and as you may have noticed, I haven't been feeling perfectly well. Yes, as Jason from Bing mentions, I'm alive. Yes, I am. I do not have COVID. Do not have COVID-19. Probably have a flu or some other type of virus. Thought it might have been pneumonia, which I've had before. I've had double pneumonia before. So if my voice sounds a little bit off, that's the reason why. That being said, we're going to continue and move forward because I don't let illness stop me. And it shouldn't stop anyone. We only have one life. We're only going to live one time. Make the most of every moment that you have. Obviously, protect those that you can. Live healthy if you can. But, don't stop living. That's the biggest problem with the entire COVID-19 overreaction that we've seen so far is people have stopped living and have become prisoners in their homes. It's not healthy. And that's one of the reasons why on our front screen, you will see that we have the suicide hotline and the domestic abuse hotlines if you need that. For those who've not been here before, we do long-form political commentary on the show. It's unique. It's a little bit different than a lot of other people because we need to talk about these things. And this is your opportunity to speak with us. With that all said, I'm going to do something a little bit different today. I'm going to start off the show in a slightly different way because there's a lot to talk about. There's the shooting in Denver that needs to be discussed. There's breaking news about Amy Barrett, who is the Supreme Court nominee that I want to address. There's the vice presidential debate between Kamala Harris and Joe Biden. And of course, there is the diatribe, the rant, the vicious, violent rant by Keith Olbermann just the other day. I want to get to all of that, obviously anything that you want to talk about. But before we do that, I'm going to jump and I'm going to show you something. It's a slightly different kind of way to start off the show, summing up some of the things we can be talking about. Let me know what you think about it as we go forward. Okay. And we're going to start. By the way, content warning.
How did we get to the 2020 election, 2010?
But we have to pass the bill so that you can find out what is in it away from the fog of the controversy.
2020.
They'll know my opinion in court packing when the election is over. Now look, I know it's a great question, y'all, and I don't blame you for asking it. But the moment I answer that question, the headline in every one of your papers will be about that.
2020.
Listen, don't the voters deserve to know? No, they don't.
2019.
But I also believe, and it's personal, and I was actually it was hurtful to hear you talk about the reputations of two United States senators who built their reputations and career on the segregation of race in this country. And it was not only that, but you also worked with them to oppose busing. And, there was a little girl in California who was part of the second class to integrate her public schools. And she was bused to school every day. And that little girl was me.
2020.
People, Susan, are voting right now. They'd like to know if you and Joe Biden are going to pack the Supreme Court.
So the Trump-Pence administration has been, because I sit on the Senate Judiciary Committee, Susan, as you mentioned, and I've witnessed the appointments for lifetime appointments to the federal courts, district courts, courts of appeal. People who are purely ideological, people who have been reviewed by legal professional organizations and found to have been not competent, are substandard. And do you know that of the 50 people who President Trump appointed to the Court of Appeals for lifetime appointments, not one is black?
2011.
So what I hope will happen is that these protests will galvanize the Democrats, maybe some Republicans to say, yeah, maybe it's time that we stood up to Wall Street and the big money interests.
2020.
Let us brace ourselves. The task is twofold. The terrorist Trump must be defeated, must be destroyed, must be devoured at the ballot box. And then he and his enablers and his supporters and his collaborators and the Mike Lees and the William Barrs and the Sean Hannitys and the Mike Pences and the Rudy Giulianis and the Kyle Rittenhouses and the Amy Coney Barretts must be prosecuted and convicted and removed from our society while we try to rebuild it and to rebuild the world Trump has nearly destroyed by turning it over to a virus. Remember it, even as we dream of a return to reality and safety and the country for which our forefathers died, that the fight is not just to win an election, but to win it by enough to chase, at least for a moment, Trump and the maggots off the stage.
2011. Twenty.
Not really, it kind of scares me.
The alarm that went off the morning of June 2nd was for real. It was a violent night in St. Louis. 4 officers were shot. Others were hit with rocks and fireworks. At least 5 businesses were damaged, looted, or set on fire. As the Officer Wellness Coordinator and CIT Coordinator with the Police Department, I was keenly aware of the rioting and spent the evening getting ready to mobilize support for officers who were impacted. After I'd gone to bed, David received a call from Lee's Alarm Company. The front door of the pawn shop had been breached. This time he didn't wake me up to tell me. He probably knew I would have tried to stop it.
If you don't give us some shit, if you don't give us some shit, we'll shut shit down.
2013.
Put money into education, not prisons. There's a fundamental problem with that approach, in my opinion. And it's this. I agree with that conceptually. But you have not addressed the reason I have 3 padlocks on my front door. So part of the discussion about reform of criminal justice policy has to be an acknowledgement that crime does occur. And especially when it is violent crime and serious crime, well, there should be a broad consensus that there should be serious and severe and swift consequence to crime.
2020.
We are part of a movement that started a long time ago, and this movement will not be deterred. This movement will not accept anything less than real, substantial, substantive solutions, which are the solutions that we have offered in our Justice and Policing Bill. And so let the beginning be today of a real conversation where the United States Congress will do its job in meeting the moment, in responding to the demands of the people.
All right, folks, so that's something that's a little different than what we've done before. But I wanted to give a way to sum up, how did we get to 2020? How did we get into the environment that we are in right now? Because it makes no sense. I mean, if you thought that everyone's asking, how did we get here? Why is our nation so divided? Where is this violence, this vitriol coming from? Well, we can go back in time, as I just showed you, from all the different sources. The elements of everything that's going on today started at least a decade ago, if not more. And there's more. I had to cut it down. Could have done the entire show just showing where we were and the things that were being said then and how they got us to where we are today. I could have done the whole thing just on gun control alone. But this is important, and maybe you loved that, maybe you hated that, I don't know. And for those who are on Facebook, I know Facebook is corrupting the signal, so I apologize for that. On YouTube, you should be seeing it with no problem. Please do let me know. Do you like that format? Should I do that for each show? Just a little preview kind of thing? Is it too long, too short? This is an interaction. Let me know what you think. But let's talk about what's happening right now, because we have some incredibly crazy things that are happening. I mean, Keith Olbermann, that was insane. That is hate speech. There's nothing else that can be said about it. When he calls some 40-50% of the nation maggots because they dared to have an opinion different than his and to vote in a way that's different than what he wanted. That is insane. Now, Keith Olbermann, for those who don't know, I am lagging on YouTube? Okay. We're going to keep trying to go. We'll see if it picks up because it may have been the video. But Keith Olbermann, for people who don't know, that's a guy who previously worked on MSNBC. He was one of their spokespeople like Rachel Maddow. And then he was completely disgraced, got thrown off of there. He eventually found his home at ESPN. And it appears that most recently, he got kicked off of ESPN. He's been kicked off of every credible news agency out there. And even, ESPN isn't news. Even those cable channels got rid of him because he is a radical. He is violent. He is vicious. He is one of the worst individuals for not only what he believes, but the way he expresses it against other people, to attack people. And Keith Olbermann went out there, and and as you saw in the clip, he's out there, he's attacking people. He's attacking Judge Amy Barrett. Why? Because she has interracial kids? Because she's a judge that doesn't have the same personal viewpoints as he does, even though she's on the 7th Circuit Court Appeals, the appeals court of the 7th Circuit. I mean, that's not a reason to hate someone because she's a Catholic. So's Joe Biden. So's Nancy Pelosi. If you want to take on and attack Judge Barrett about her religion, would you have allowed someone to attack Justice Ginsburg because she was Jewish? Religion is not a reason to attack someone. That's just wrong. And I would think that America is above that we are beyond that, but apparently not. And Keith Olbermann, because he's been kicked off of every single credible news agency out there, he went to the only source that he possibly could. Now he's on YouTube because he has nowhere else to go. 29,000 people follow him. I don't believe they're all following him because they agree with him. I think some of them are watching him just to see how far he goes, to see where is the left in America actually getting to. Because they are going to the extremes. And we are watching politicians like Joe Biden, politicians like Kamala Harris, that are flip-flopping on their positions that they have said years ago to be able to get a vote. And there is a big cost for this. When you start siding with people like Keith Olbermann, when you start siding with the extremists like BLM, Antifa, Plot, when you're going with those groups who are looking for revolution, overthrowing the government, destroying America, you know what you wind up with? You wind up with China or North Korea or Venezuela, the places that we receive tens of thousands of people legally every year, and illegally hundreds, tens of thousands each year try to get into our nation from those countries because they are abysmal hellholes. That's what I have seen. That is what's consistently true over and over and over again. And we need to be aware of this. We need to call this out. Keith Olbermann is one of the worst things to happen to America. Yes, he's an American. He has the right to be able to spout hate speech. I'm not going to deny him that, but I am definitely going to call out the hate speech for what it is and to call on the Democratic Party that he is a member of and that he claims to represent and say, denounce this. Is this what your party is about? Is this what you're supporting? Is this what you want your elected officials to become? I mean, we hear on a much lighter scale, we hear the same thing from Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, but it's still hate speech, and it's insane. And I think it needs to be called out. I called it out in a video a day ago, 2 days ago, and I'm calling it out now. And I think we need to say that is wrong. It is evil, it is vile, and it is not American. And that's probably one of the reasons why we see in America right now, there's a bunch of people, and hang on, we see that according to Rasmussen reports, 22% of people of gun-owning households added their gun just this year since about May. We're saying that some 43% of people just added a gun since May of this year. And of those people, some 54% feel more safe that they have a gun in their homes. And if you've added a gun in the last 4 months, 90% feel more safe. That tells you something about where America is. As much as we hear people like the BLM, the Antifa, when we hear politicians like Anthony Brindisi, Nancy Pelosi, Bob Wessler, when we hear them promoting this, we need to defund the police. You know what the general American public has been doing that the American media has not been telling you? They've been going out and getting armed. They're getting guns. Throughout this year, I believe the number is approximately 3.5 million new gun owners in America since March, because people are terrified that the government cannot protect them and that the government is failing, because we see in state after state, especially those states held by Democrats, in cities held by Democrats, that people aren't safe. That you have, like in Rochester, New York, people sitting and having a dinner, as shown in the video, where suddenly they're being attacked by a mob. They had nothing to do with anything. They just got attacked because the mob wanted to put fear into those individuals. We've seen it in Seattle, Portland, Kenosha, in Dallas. It's incredible. And I'll get to Denver, where we saw even more of that fear on display. By the way, folks, this is a conversation between you and me. You can call into 607-242-1582. You can leave us a comment on Facebook, on YouTube, and let us know what you're thinking. I know there is some lag going on and off in Facebook, apparently on YouTube, and that's because they don't want you to hear this. They don't want you. The internet giants who are currently being investigated by Congress, congressional hearings, trying to remove their protected status because they are manipulating you. That is a fact. October 6th, in the congressional judiciary, congressional hearings in the Judiciary Committee to determine the future of what goes on with these internet giants and their manipulation of search engines, in their shadow banning of conservatives and Republicans and anyone who does not go by the approved statements of the Democratic left, in particular the Progressive Party. Because it's not Democrats. And I think that's another thing that needs to be discussed. Democrats aren't progressives. The progressives I have met, Working Families Party, BLM, all of them, they make it very clear. They're not Democrats. They're part of the Democratic Party, but they're not Democrats. They want to destroy America. It's like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. She's a Democratic socialist. She's not a Democrat, but she's in the Democrat Party because that party has power, and that power allows them to destroy our nation and the fundamental values of our nation, like the Constitution. A couple days ago, I was talking about the 25th Amendment with Nancy Pelosi. And Nancy Pelosi, this is one of the things that you notice. She put out this really interesting statement. And she said, well, we're following the Constitution. This is what the Constitution says. We need to have some group, a body, to determine if the president is of sound mind and health. Because the 25th Amendment said so. That's not the Constitution. See, she's trying to give credibility to what she's doing by telling you that the 25th Amendment is the Constitution. And the fact is, it's not. Thank you, John Taylor. The lag seems to be gone on YouTube for the time being. But the 25th Amendment isn't the Constitution. The Constitution is the Constitution. There's the Bill of Rights. There's 10 amendments to the Constitution in the Bill of Rights. The 25th Amendment is an amendment made long after, 1967, created after the Constitution was made because there was apparently a gap in what the Constitution told us to do about a president that was killed or unable to be able to perform his duties. That's not the same thing. But this is how we see some manipulate the public and the knowledge that the public has, and the media is pushing it along without question so that you get deceived and you lose power. And that's dangerous. That is incredibly dangerous. It's part of the reason why most recent poll from Gallup on the election coverage, and one of the big questions that they had is, they asked two big questions. What do people think about Donald Trump and what do they think about Biden? And most people think, we see 49% of the public thinks that Joe Biden has presidential qualities, but they don't agree with him as being the best person on the issues. In fact, that's President Trump. We also see that most Americans think they're better off now, 56%, than at any other time in recent history, even going back to 1984. That kind of tells you why there's so much fear among the Democratic Party, why they're going through so many steps, like the 25th Amendment. They've tried to impeach President Trump. They've tried to frame him with Russian collusion. They have come up with every single story they could. They promised you there would be World War III, that there would be more wars in the world. They won't tell you that he's been nominated 3 times for a Nobel Peace Prize, both in 2020 and in 2021. There's the award that's given in 2020. There's the award that's given in 2021. He's already been nominated for 3 Nobel Peace Prizes, and he has demonstrably increased the amount of peace in the world factually, not the hope of it like President Obama, the fact of it as he has done. And Democrats are terrified. That's why they were hoping that when President Trump got COVID-19, you saw it on Twitter, they were praying that he would die, which is a sick thing to say. And that sickness comes from people like Keith Olbermann, which is an expression of things we've seen from 2010 going forward. Slowly but surely, we're seeing this disconnect in many of the media and the news media pushing people apart, separating everyone so that they become more angry and more violent. And that's when we suddenly hear people saying, no one has ever said, or I'm sure there's some people who did, but we never heard people say, oh, I hope the president dies. Are you kidding? It's our president. Do you know what kind of turmoil that would put into our nation? What kind of devastation it would do economically as well as socially? How it would impact the world to know that the leading nation of the world is suddenly destabilized because we lost a leader? Especially in an environment like this where there's so much contention. Because I guarantee if President Trump had died, you would have seen Democrats trying to find every way possible to deny Mike Pence the ability to become president. That's a scary state that we're in. And it's terrifying. And it's made even more terrifying when I start thinking about the fact, as we see here, October 10th, just a day ago, we see that Vice President Biden, he doesn't care what you think. He, as I put in the video, he doesn't think you deserve to know. Whoops, sorry, a little loud on that. He doesn't think you deserve to know about who he's going to put into the Supreme Court. Or even more simply, whether or not he plans to pack the court. That's something I think is an essential thing in an election coming up, a contentious election. The public needs to know. What do you plan to do with the Supreme Court? Are you going to turn the Supreme Court into a mockery, into a political circus? Because I guarantee you, if Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, and really we're talking about Kamala Harris, if they go out there and they suddenly put out 4, 5 new Supreme Court justices, and then what happens when the Republicans come back in? They add another 2 or 3, and then we just, we'll have as many people in the Supreme Court as we have in Congress, each of them being put in by whatever political party is in charge at that time to give them an advantage for a 4-year period. That's not what the Supreme Court is there for. That is not what they're supposed to do. This is crazy. Yes, the public does deserve, Joe Biden, to know what you plan to do with the Supreme Court. It is a major political position, and you can't go back and say, oh, well, it's illegal for the president to do this, as some are saying. I think it was Justice Coons, Chris Coons, might have been others, who are saying, oh, well, you can't do this. I know it was Nancy Pelosi. This is potentially impeachment worthy, that the president followed the Constitution and nominated a Supreme Court justice. That's his job. It's in the Constitution. If there is a vacancy, the president nominates. The Senate affirms and recommends. That's their jobs. That's what you're supposed to do. There is no stipulation on when that happens. Like it can't happen here or there. There is no exclusion on that. But they're trying to find anything because they are terrified. Because 22% of Americans are out there getting firearms, something that they have been trying to stop people from being able to do for decades, because 90% of the people feel more safe in having a firearm in their home because people are more confident. 68% of voters in the United States, likely voters, are concerned that there will be deadly attacks on the police, or rather that the deadly attacks on police will lead to a shortage of police officers and reduce public safety where they live. Now, that's something that, if you've been following the program, you've heard me say this already. You've heard me have this argument several times that if we reduce the number, if we defund the police department, which in every single example has proven to be disbanding some amount of the police, if we do that, We have seen every single time crime has gone up, violent crime has increased, and more people are endangered, and more people have been shot and killed. That is a fact. I don't care what BLM wants you to think. I don't care what Antifa promises you. It doesn't matter that AOC agrees with it, that Kamala Harris is actually paying people to get out, 584 people being released from prison, from jail, from being arrested, because the net result has consistently been the same thing everywhere in the nation. If you defund the police, that means you disband some amount of the police, which means you are going to be in danger because there are less police to do the job and you will be less protected. Excuse me. You will be less protected and you will be in danger's way. That is a fact. The numbers prove it. The news articles prove it. The independent research proves it everywhere in this nation. And that is an absolute. There is no question on that. So we have to ask questions. We have to be concerned because we do deserve to know whether or not he's going to, Joe Biden needs to tell us. We need to know. Kamala Harris needs to tell us. This is an essential part of the election. It's not something frivolous. It is a fact that people will vote for or vote against if they are aware of it. And you deserve to know. And we deserve to have the election, the debate, because there's no reason not to. I don't know how many people know that back on October 6th, when the Committee on Presidential Debates decided to go to a video format, 175 medical doctors came together and told them there was absolutely no reason to do that a debate in person can be done. And the reason why I have a question about the problem with the debates not being in person, I have no faith or confidence or trust in the Democratic Party, in Joe Biden or his team or Kamala Harris, in not manipulating the fact that they are separated and cannot be seen, and therefore they can feed Joe Biden either drugs to keep him awake and lucid or to provide him with answers that he can repeat back to the public. Now, you say, well, Mike, there's no way to prove that. Well, yeah, we've seen in 2016 the Democratic Party, Donna, Donna, I forgot her last name, who's now on Fox News because she got kicked off of MSNBC because Donna Brazile, gave Hillary Clinton the questions to a debate. We've seen the Democrats cheat. We have emails that have proven the Democratic Party has cheated. They've rigged primaries against Bernie Sanders, that they have given out. Yes, thank you, Katie, and thank you, Tina, because I lost it for a second there. But we know that they've cheated before. They have been caught cheating before, both individuals and the party, systematically. So why in the world would I have any confidence that if Joe Biden had the opportunity to have just this much of his body shown, and we believe, and it seems very apparent that he is having mental breakdowns, that they wouldn't pump him full of whatever medication would keep him alert and viable during a debate and feed him questions. We've seen that he has, and it's been proven, that he has a teleprompter when he does his interviews from the basement, where he has a teleprompter telling him both the question and his answer to interviews on TV. Why would I think he wouldn't do that in a presidential debate? Even as 175 175 doctors are saying he can. Hi, Gene. By the way, let me take a moment. Thank you, Jason, for being on the show. John Taylor, I see you there. Thank you. Katie Havlick. I'm sorry if I mispronounced that. Thank you for your update. Tina, it's always good to see you. And Gene, hey, I'm glad you're here. Gene, there's a bunch of stuff I'm trying to catch up with, but basically we've gone over how did we get to where we are here now in the 2020 election, as well as some of the things that are affecting it. Like the fact that gun owners, the number of gun owners has increased just last month by I believe it was over 1 million gun owners. 22% of gun owners are mentioning that they've gotten their guns in the last 4 months and that they feel safe and that they're afraid. 68% of people in America are afraid that there's going to be more violence because there's less police officers and they need to protect themselves. We've gone over why Joe Biden should tell us, the American people, what he plans to do with the Supreme Court. We've gone over Keith Olbermann and some of the insane vitriol and hate speech that he has done. But going forward, let me actually jump back to the Supreme Court justice. And I am going to get to the Denver shooting. There is misinformation out there about that. There's a lot of people who have been misinformed. I have been following it from the first couple of hours yesterday and all through last night and today. And I've been following up on that. So I do want to give people the correct information. But I want to take a moment and I want to actually give you the breaking news, something that you may not have heard about yet, about Amy Coney Barrett. And let me show you. And by the way, as always, the links to everything that I'm discussing will be in the description on YouTube so that you can read everything I'm talking about and check for yourself, because you should know the facts and you should be able to see them for yourself. So we have the opening statement of Amy Coney Barrett, who, when she speaks to the Senate Judicial Committee tomorrow. It has been released as of 10:30 today, and I did read through it. Now, at the moment, there are people like Chris Coons, who is a Democrat out of Delaware, and he says that she's not qualified to serve on the Supreme Court, even though she is an appellate justice of the 7th Circuit right now. Even though she is by all means qualified, other than the fact that she would be the first person in, I think, 45 years to not be from Yale or Harvard and be in the Supreme Court, which I personally think is a good thing. But his reasoning for this is that she's religious and she has a different political view than he does. That's his big thing. Because the Affordable Care Act, the Obamacare, he thinks it's settled. Well, you know what, Chris Coons? He says it's been settled, that this is done. The law doesn't need to be reviewed again because the law has been reviewed. Chris Coons, the law said I was a slave, or people of my skin color were a slave in America at one time. The law at one time said women don't get to vote. That was settled law. Are you telling me that that should never have been reviewed? Are you trying to say, Chris Coons, that just because a law has been reviewed and maybe even gone to the Supreme Court once before, or even twice or 3 times before, that it can never again be reviewed? Because if you're saying that, Chris Coons, then you're saying that anyone, black, Hispanic, minorities, should be in chains, and you're also saying, by that same logic, that women shouldn't be in the workplace and they definitely shouldn't be able to vote. I don't think you want to make that comment, Chris Coons. I don't think you want to make that argument that settled law can't be changed, that there is no review that could possibly happen in the future and be more correct. Chris Coons, you're out of your mind. Just like you would never dare, Chris Coons would never dare allow anyone to go to a Supreme Court justice like Justice Ginsburg and say, your religion makes you a problem. I dare you, he'd be the first one screaming about that. Well, guess what? You can't attack her for being a Christian, and you can't attack her for having interracial kids because she, out of the goodness of her heart, adopted kids who happen to be of a different race. You can't pick on her for not having an abortion because she has a child with Down syndrome. You can't attack people for those kinds of things. And you can't say they're not qualified because they have a difference of opinion. That goes back to the whole Keith Olbermann insanity of you're not thinking like I do, so you need to be locked up. Are you crazy? What's wrong with these Democrats? But what did Amy Cohen say? What did she say? The part that I thought that was of most importance happens to be this part in here. She mentions that, and I want to make sure I get the right, there's two parts I want to get here. She says, as she learned from Justice Scalia, a judge must apply the law as written, not as the judge wishes it, but as it is written. Sometimes that approach meant reaching results that even Justice Scalia did not like. But that's what the law says. She goes on to say, for herself, and I just had it here. She says, for herself, courts have a vital responsibility to enforce the rule of law, which is critical to a free society. But courts are not designed to solve every problem or right every wrong in our public life. The policy decisions and value judgments of government must be made by political branches elected by and accountable to the people. The public should not expect courts to do so, and courts should not try. Now, for anyone who doesn't know what that, if it's too legal a statement, let me make sure you understand. Don't legislate from the bench. That's it. You don't create laws with a bunch of judges at the Supreme Court or any other level. Don't legislate from the bench. Congress makes laws. The president can veto or sign laws, but courts don't. You get to elect people to go to Congress. You elect the president. You don't elect Supreme Court justices because they are there for life and they are separate of the politics. Obviously, that's what Chris Coons is really upset about. Chris Coons wants a judge who is going to create laws from the bench because he can't do it in Congress. He doesn't have a president who's going to allow it to be passed. So he needs another way to create a law to make you less free. That's what I think Chris Coons is really trying to say. I think that's what his real problem is. That's what I think is the problem of Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer. They want someone who will change the law to whatever they want. And because they can't get it in Justice Amy Barrett, then they want someone else. Because they want power. They want to control your life. And I think that is absolutely wrong. That is the worst thing you could possibly have. If you disagree, folks, let me know. You can call in 607-242-1582. You can leave a comment, as many people are, on YouTube and Facebook, and say, Mike, I don't think that's true. If you think that we should have a Supreme Court that creates laws, then please tell me why. I want to hear that argument. Please justify why we should have judges legislate laws, create laws that we have to live by, and not the Congress who you get to elect, or the president who you get to elect, but someone who's put up for life that you don't have any control over. If you think that the Supreme Court should be more political, which is something that Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg absolutely despised and disagreed with and did not want politics, as much as people seem to be trying to say it differently now, she was opposed the politicization of the Supreme Court. There's something that's really funny that's happening, by the way. if you haven't seen it yet, keep an eye out. You're going to hear, and are starting to hear, Democrats are going to say, well, see, Mike, you just don't get it. Because packing the court is, in fact, Amy nominating Justice Barrett, Judge Barrett, to the Supreme Court, nominating her, that is packing the court. You're going to hear that. That's the politics. That's politicizing the Supreme Court because Judge Barrett has been nominated. And let me answer that question for people. Let me answer that absolute lack of logic. The Constitution says if there is a vacancy, the president gets to fill it, to nominate, and the Senate gets to vote. That's what the Constitution says. That's not political. That is the law of the land. That is our Constitution. That is what has always happened. That's not politicizing. That is a fact. You don't have to like that fact, but that is the fact. So if Chris Coons doesn't like it, it doesn't matter. That is a fact. That's not packing the court. The court is 9 justices. President Trump hasn't tried to add a 10th justice. The Senate and the House of Representatives did not vote to add new justices so that they could pack the court. That's not packing the court. That's filling a vacancy. And if you hear someone say something as stupid as nominating Judge Barrett is packing the court, remind them that they don't know what they're talking about. Read the Constitution. It is not packing the court to fill a vacancy. But again, they're trying to find a way, some individuals, we're talking about elected officials, who are trying to find a way to manipulate your thoughts and to make you react out of emotion. And it's terrifying. And speaking of that terror, and I do want to get into, at some point I want to really go over, and you can see her speech for yourself. I do at one point want to get into Binghamton University calling itself a primarily white institution and that it's going to burn the books. That's my wording there. They're not burning books, essentially. They're pretty close to it. And I've already addressed this because this is something that we've heard from the progressive wings, the fringe of the Democratic Party. They've been trying to burn and purge media for a while. You know, when they try to get rid of Blazing Saddles, Gone with the Wind. Well, this is just another extension of that, where they're looking to audit, or in other words, purge, remove history and facts from the college institutions, which is insane. And I do want to get into that, but let's talk about the shooting in Denver. I don't know how many people started following this yesterday. Last night, I think it was about 10 o'clock at night, I first heard about this shooting, where the gentleman you see right now on the screen on the left, that was the victim. He was shot. He was killed by this man you see on the right with the sunglasses and the hat. Now, before I get to that, let me fill you in, and here is the facts as we know it at this time, as verified by news media at this time. There was a pro-America, pro-President Trump, pro-police rally that was conducted by Tig. If you ever saw the movie 13 Hours, if you read the book 13 Hours, he was one of the Americans over in Benghazi who had to go through the 13 hours of being attacked, while President Obama and Hillary Clinton told you it was just a reaction to a movie, a video on the internet. And he was the one who organized this event. The man that I said, the victim, was one of the protesters as part of that rally in favor of America. This gentleman, whose name is, oh God, how did I forget? Matthew Doloff. Matthew Doloff is the shooter. He happens to be a security, a Pinkerton security agent. He was hired by Denver's 9 news station to go out with their crews because for the last several months, they have been worried that their news crews were going to be attacked as they covered BLM and Antifa, which again goes to the mostly peaceful nature of BLM and Antifa. So they're so innocent that news crews had to hire security to protect them from those rioters. Matt Doloff, who is a supporter or was a supporter of Occupy Wall Street, was hired, and he seems to have military training. He's very good with a firearm. He and the victim got into a confrontation. No one is exactly sure how that happened. There are 3 videos of this entire event. 3. And none of those videos showed us how this happened. This event you see on screen right now is the first photo of these two confronting each other. What you can see and what is being misrepresented right now, and you're hearing this from the left, like Sean King, is saying, oh no, you're seeing the BLM guy, the victim is assaulting, he's attacking. No, he's not. Look at the movement. He's standing still. This guy's moving forward. Matt Doloff is moving forward. He's attacking. That's what you're seeing. And he got smacked because he's attacking. Apparently looking to grab that can of bear mace. And what we see in the next frame is that and this is the scene that most people see people like Sean King showing first. Oh, see, he's advancing. This is the victim. He's moving forward. They show you the pictures out of order because they want you to believe a false narrative. They're lying to you. They want you to have your emotions up so that you will believe anything they say, so you will do what they say because it's not true. The first photo is this. An altercation has happened. Matt Doloff is the aggressor. That is a fact. That is the first image. The second image is the victim retreating. He is backing away. He is giving distance. You don't think so? Look at the hat. It's missing. The glasses are disturbed, and he is reaching for a gun. This happens after that. Not the way that Sean King is trying to tell people. That is what happened. What happens after that is Matt Doloff shoots. Then we see this. Now, this is a very important picture. As a matter of fact, I want to try and get this on the screen a little better if I can. Hang on. Yeah. So you can see it a little bit better. And I want you to see in this photo, and this is a great description by Ian Miles Chung, but it's very clear. And it's a beautiful picture caught by the photographer's Helen somebody. And she put this out, and it's incredible because it's the moment after the bullet has been fired. It's already been fired. What we saw happen is Matt Doloff was reaching for his gun. There is no threat. He's not in danger of his life at this moment. He has his gun drawn before this can of mace ever comes up. And before that can of mace could fire, he has already fired. And he is aiming, if you look at the laser sight, for the victim's eyeball. Not for his legs, not for his chest, not disabling shots. He's aiming for his eye. And if he has enough time, precision, and capability of being able to make a headshot, a calculated headshot, which is incredibly hard, if he's able to do that, he could have shot him in the leg, could have shot him in the gut, could have shot him in the chest. he could have disabled this. He could have ended this event. You know what else is important to think about when we hear about the Denver shooting? Police were 100 yards away. 100 yards away. There is no crowd around these individuals. This did not need to happen. That is why Matthew Doloff is now being arrested on first-degree murder charges. But here's the thing that really gets me about that. And here's the question I have about it. And you haven't heard this from anyone in the news media. Why does an American news channel on American soil need an armed American security force? As I understand from others in the news media who have been overseas and embedded with American troops in active war zones, they don't get to have weapons. The news media don't get to be armed. Why do we have an armed member of security, Pinkertons, who is traveling with a news media group? How dangerous is Denver that they think that's necessary? And this gentleman, who apparently wasn't vetted because he was a member of Occupy Wall Street, it has come up, it is believed. He is a far left supporter, it has come up, it is believed, decided to shoot another man where it was unnecessary to do so, with police 100 yards away. He wasn't going to get, no one else is armed. Why is the news media doing this? That's a big question I have. Why do they need an armed security for the news media? And these are people who are covering BLM Antifa. Are you telling me that Antifa is so dangerous in Denver that they need an armed security guard? Because if that's true, somebody needs to tell Joe Biden, who thinks that Antifa is an idea, someone needs to tell Representative Nadler, who thinks it's an idea, that, hey, this idea, this myth is so dangerous that news crews need to have armed security with them. This is going to be a major, massive lawsuit for 9 News in Denver. They're going to get sued massively, and they're going to lose because I can't see the justification for that murder. And they can only say either Antifa is so dangerous in Denver that they need armed security, but if it isn't, as BLM and Antifa supporters would like us to believe, that if they're mostly peaceful, as we keep being told by CNBC and MSNBC and the national news media, if they're so innocent and non-threatening, then that is an overreaction by 9 News, and they need to be punished because that led to an innocent man being killed. By the way, there's also questions in the media from Sean King and others who are saying, hey, well, he's a fascist. There's no proof. There's no evidence of that. There is evidence of Matt Doloff being a member of Occupy Wall Street. There is evidence that Matt Doloff, the shooter, was a supporter of the far left. Not a member of BLM, not a member of Antifa, as far as we know at this moment. But he is a supporter of the far left. We do know he has gone through Occupy Wall Street and was active in that. There is absolutely nothing that says that this gentleman, the victim, was a racist, a fascist, was anything except an American, expressing his points of view. So again, we're watching the media and certain far left elements try to use manipulation to get you to the emotional thought that Keith Olbermann mentioned, as we showed in the video, that if you don't agree with them, you are a maggot. That is what Keith Olbermann said. He said, if you don't agree, you're a maggot. That you need to be punished and prosecuted because you have the audacity as an American citizen with the First Amendment behind you to have a different idea. My God, that is terrifying. You can believe in BLM all you want. You're an American citizen, go for it. Believe whatever you want. I'm not going to try and change your mind. That's not my goal. But you should be terrified that there are people who are out there who represent these groups that are saying that if someone does not believe what they want them to believe, that you have to punish them. And that someone is willing and cheering. And that's the other terrifying thing. BLM and Antifa members are on video cheering and happy and grateful that an American citizen who is essentially and presumably innocent of any wrongdoing, as far as we can tell, this innocent individual, they were happy and cheering that he died. The victim, they were happy that a victim got killed. That is sick. And it's exactly what we saw them do in Portland when the Mr. 100% Antifa ambushed, as we have learned, ambushed an innocent man, and his only crime was he supported President Trump, as the Constitution, as the First Amendment, as being an American citizen allows him to do. And Antifa, BLM, the fringe left want you to elect more people that believe that you should celebrate killing someone for having a different idea. Oh my God, no. I would love to hear, where are the Democrats saying, we oppose this? Keith Olbermann is wrong. Americans aren't maggots for having a different opinion. Where are the Democrats standing up and saying no one should cheer that someone has been killed because they have a different idea? No one should be violently oppressed because they have a different idea. Where is the Democrats who are saying that? I want to hear them say that. I've asked Anthony Brindisi to say it. He won't. I've asked Bob Wessler to say that. He won't. I've asked the other Democrats in my local region, County Executive Jason Garnar, Assemblywoman Donna Lapardo. They're all Democrats. Say this. Go out and say this. I have asked this of the members of BLM and Plot and Antifa in Southern Tier, New York, and said, denounce the violence that is going on. You want to protest all day long. I will never stop you. But why don't you denounce the violence that has happened in other places and amongst some of their own members? Like an individual named Messiah Andrews, who has been arrested twice on the record, confirmed by the news media. I'm not making an allegation. It is a fact. Messiah Andrews, who is one of the members, possibly leaders of Progressive Leaders of Tomorrow, has been arrested twice for disrupting the peace in October of 2019 as he hijacked a Columbus Day parade. And again, just a couple of weeks ago in Rochester, New York, when he was part of that group that were rioting in Rochester, and he was arrested on second-degree rioting. Denounce this. If your group is so innocent, if it is such a good, pure, great thing for America, denounce the violence. But they won't. What they will do is they will back Keith Olbermann, who wants to call you, the American public, maggots because you don't agree with him. Because they will tell you that you are evil and a racist and a bigot because you don't agree with them. That's what they tell me all the time. How can you be black? I'm in an election race. You know what's the number one question I get in my election race? And I'll just show you to you. Yeah, that's right. I'm in an election race. So you know what's the number one thing I get to hear all the time from my detractors? And my detractors are BLM supporters, Black Lives Matters supporters, Antifa supporters. You know what they keep asking me? How can you be black and not agree? Because I denounce violence. I denounce any organization that believes in fear and intimidation and uses violence to cause other people to submit to against their will, period. I don't care what the group is. And they can't seem to understand that. And they are livid and they are against me because of that reason. Yeah, it's starting to freeze. It's funny. When I start to say something important, when I make the biggest points, when I talk about BLM, when I talk about some of the things that are going on in our government, instantly the Facebook and the YouTube automated censors or systems, their censorship, they start messing with the feed that is 100% fine up until that moment. That's fine. And we see this kind of censorship, we see this kind of single-minded manipulation all the time. And it's insidious. I mentioned, you may recall, back in, this was, not a lot of people saw this. Not a lot of people were paying attention to this article. But it was back in June that I was talking about the media going out and purging, removing things they didn't like. That they were going to get rid of those offensive materials. And in there, I said very clearly that if we allow them to do this, if they move forward with that approach, that we were going to see that grow and it was going to turn into book burning. And here we go, October 7th. What happens? Binghamton University, which is being sued right now, which is being investigated by the Department of Education right now, a story that I broke and no one else in the news media wants to touch. Binghamton University says, well, they are white, they're a white institution, and therefore they have to change and remove books and information so that you can get the proper training, so that you have the right thoughts in your head about what is or is not the history of the world. Okay. One. Hot. Yes. Keith Olbermann is a crackpot. And that's why I'm calling him out. And nope, not Italian. Although, believe it or not, I do have some Irish blood in my family. And I do have a brother and sister that's Irish. You know what? A little bit of personal history. Not a lot of people are aware of this. Not because it's hidden, it just doesn't come up. You know what's one of the biggest reasons why I hate, no, it's not a strong word. It is true. I hate the ideology that Black Lives Matters, that Antifa put forth. They require, BLM requires that people of different colors, in particular, that if someone is white, they are evil. That's what we're seeing with the Binghamton University, okay? That because they're white, and I don't know that it's majority white, but because they call themselves a white institution, they have to change their lives. They are inherently wrong, evil, bad. That's the ideology they want to get across, the far left. Half my family is white. I have brothers and sisters who are white. I am supposed to hate, according to BLM, I should hate my brother and sister and their kids because they are half white. That somehow they are lesser beings because they were born a certain skin color, not the same as myself, and somehow that makes them less worthwhile. That they have somehow done something wrong by being born. I disagree. I will never accept that. I will never accept an ideology that tells me that members of my family who I love, who I have grown up with, who are good people, that I should somehow hate them because of the color of their skin not being exactly the same as mine. And in fact, my skin color is just not dark enough for some of these people. So therefore, I'm just as evil. How dare you make that statement? How dare you promote that ideology? How dare Does it upset me? Yeah, a lot. Gene mentions, WNG has blocked many Republicans I know from posting on their site. They do not answer emails when asked why. For people who don't know, WBNG is a local news station. I have appeared on that news station. They've interviewed me many times on many different subjects, homelessness and so forth. They will not cover my election along with the rest of the news media. And yes, they have blocked many people. The reason why is there are certain ideas that news media don't want to have answered. They don't want people to know. The algorithm, I love and I hope people will share this video, to share my channel, to let people know about it. Maybe you subscribe if you like what I've done, maybe not. To comment. Because they are the algorithms of Google, of YouTube, of Facebook are absolutely going to try and bury this information because they don't want people having the conversation. They don't want you to ask the question. When they don't want you to have a conversation and say, hey, you know what? The public shouldn't expect courts to make laws. That's not their job. They don't want you to have that conversation. They want you to accept that they will so that they can get what they want. Some of these people, the internet moguls out there, the news media, don't want you to think and realize that 68% of the public is afraid that defunding the police is going to make them less safe, and therefore they need to get a firearm, as millions, at least 3.5 million people have done, and 90% of them feel safer. They don't want you to have that conversation. They don't want you to think about that. They don't want you to think and realize that 56% of America thinks we are better off today than almost any point in our past. They don't want you to think about that. They don't want you to consider how much does the purging of books and information at our institutions, at a college, at Binghamton University, is so much like what we saw in the Reichstag in Germany in the 1940s. And if I mention the political organization's name, instantly this video, it'll go from being unseen or hard to find to being banned altogether. The news media doesn't want you to think about that. They don't want you to ask a question. They want you to accept a false narrative, the narrative that gives them power, that allows certain people into elected office so that they have the most power. They want you to think this guy is attacking when he is being attacked. They want you to have the wrong idea so that they can manipulate you. And I don't believe in that. That's why I'm here week after week, every week for 10 years now, actually 14 years now, talking about this, addressing this. And for those who are in my local area, yeah, that's also part of the reason why I'm running. Because this stuff is important. It is vital. Now, of course, if you disagree, and that's perfectly fine. You can disagree with me. Yes, I have passion. Yes, I have information. I pay attention. I do my homework. But if you don't, leave a comment. Or you can call in to 607-242-1582 because your voice is valuable. It's not just me here. It's you. And maybe I'm wrong. If I am, tell me why. I want to learn. Kurt mentions, I don't get it myself. It's like half the country is from another planet and it happened quickly. Very odd. Kurt, one thing I got to disagree with there. Let me explain. It's not half the country. It's not even a quarter of the country. Literally, this is a fact. Literally, the far left, that's BLM, Antifa, Progressive Leaders of Tomorrow, Working Families Party, the Democratic Socialists, they make up approximately 20% of the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party makes up about 25% of the United States. Republicans also make up about 25, 27% of the nation. The overwhelming majority of Americans have nothing to do with progressivism, with the far left, with BLM, or any of that ideology. And those groups are losing favor, as many polls, and I've shown this over the last couple of weeks, are losing their support. It's not half the country. It may be the focus of the news media. It may be the focus of Kamala Harris, of Joe Biden, of the progressives like Nancy Pelosi, of Anthony Brindisi, Bob Wessler. It may be their focus to make you feel like everyone believes this. They don't. It is a fraction of a small group of America. 25% of America, Democrats. 20% of that 25%, roughly 2.5%, 3% of the Democratic Party are progressive, far left, and or radical. It's not half the nation. They just have very big voices and they have very big supporters. I guarantee you, if someone gave me $1 million and I could promote this show like I would want to, I'd be in competition with WNBF, all the rest of those guys, and I would make them fearful. Because it takes money to reach enough people, and they've got money. The far left has money because they are a political group. This isn't about some kind of uplifting movement. They're not trying to lift anyone up. They're just trying to get more power. Jason from Bing mentions, I want your opinion on the new New York red, orange, yellow zones. And Hot mentions, almost seems like the alien theory is not so far-fetched. I'm not quite sure about the alien theory. If you can tell me a little bit, I'm not sure if I know what that theory is, so I can't comment on that. But let me answer Jason. Excuse me, folks. Like I said, not at 100%. You'd be surprised how I feel right now. It's crap. I feel miserable, but I'm trying to get through. So, to answer your opinion, Jason, or to answer your question on the New York red, orange, yellow zones, Governor Cuomo is an absolute dictatorial authoritarian that is ruining and destroying New York State. His single-minded, arbitrary rules about how to protect people is probably one of the worst things that we could possibly see happen in this nation. And in fact, it is something that that we see, where is it? I have it somewhere here. The WHO disagrees with him. Lockdowns are the worst thing possible. They do more harm than they do good. Again, why is it that when I do the show, the suicide hotline, the domestic abuse hotline, their numbers are up every single time? Because we have had almost exponential increases in the number of suicides, in the number of people who have domestic abuse problems, that have alcohol and drug abuse problems since we started locking people down. He has the worst idea possible. And to say that we have a yellow, orange, and red zone is incorrect. You know what? For people who don't know, I live in the southern tier of New York, Binghamton, Broome County. We have been identified in the city of Binghamton as a orange zone. And that is because 9 people are in a hospital, which is sad. There are 190,000 people in Broome County. 9 people are in a hospital. There are 38,000 people in the city of Binghamton. 9 people are in a hospital. We are now our orange zone, which means that we have to cut down the number of people who are able to go to businesses like restaurants or services. And that resulted today, and just before I came on to the show, one of our local diners the Red Oak Diner just shut down. Why? Because people can't go to the diner. They've been struggling all year, and this was the death blow to that business. And they're not the only one. Lockdowns hurt more people than they help. More people are not able to work, are not able to get enough money to survive. They can't feed themselves and their kids well enough. They are depressed, and there is violence going on because of the lockdowns, because 9 people are in a hospital out of 190,000 people in the county, out of 38,000 people in the city of Binghamton. And our mortality rate is 0.04. Let me say that again. It is 0.04% of the population. Is every death sad? Absolutely. And I am sorry for every family and friend and husband, daughter, everything. Everyone who knew the 83 people who have died this year from COVID-19. Absolutely. Just as I'm sorry for everybody who has died this year because of drunk driving. People who have died this year because of domestic abuse, because of suicide. And guess what? If I add up all the people who have died because of alcohol and drug abuse, because of being locked up in COVID-19, if we take in all the people who have suffered and died because of domestic abuse, because of being locked up with COVID-19, if we take in the number of people who have committed suicide because of being locked up and isolated because of COVID-19, that is massively higher than the number of people who've died from COVID-19. It is such a high number that no agency, no news agency, no government agency will give you what that number is because it dwarfs the number of people who have died. So yes, I am saddened by that. But what they are doing right now hurts more people for a longer period of time. You're going to see the entire southern tier, besides the state of New York, never economically recovering again. 500,000 people left New York State. Guess what? Out of just New York City alone, guess what? They had money. That's the middle and upper class. That's the people who pay all the taxes. They got out of Dodge. And you're telling me that we're going to be able to spend all the money that New York State likes to spend, that Broome County is going to spend all the money they like to spend on all the programs they like to spend, when everyone with the money is getting out of Dodge because this place sucks, because of the political and economic policies of a dictator named Andrew Cuomo? You may disagree. You may say, Mike, that's just not accurate. Okay, maybe you think I'm wrong. Tell me how. Please, show me how the number of suicides have decreased while lockdowns have gone on. Show me how drug abuse, domestic abuse have gone down while we've had lockdowns. Tell me how we have not seen, I believe nationally it's 1 in 5 businesses. In this area, I believe it is, we are at about 18% of small businesses that have shut down and are continuing to shut down. Tell me how that is helping the economy, how that is helping the community. Please, please do tell me how I'm wrong on that. Kurt goes on to say, de Blasio is an idiot. New York is screwed because of him and Cuomo. You're right. You're right. Mavis says, I thought we were yellow, not orange. The last thing I saw, and Mavis, if I'm incorrect there, I apologize. Again, I've been sick this week, and I haven't followed everything exactly as much as I would like. The last thing that I saw was that we were orange. Yellow is the lowest level. Orange is the next higher, and then the highest would be red. And as I understood, we were in the second, the middle, the dangerous point because of the number of the growth in the number of cases. By the way, that's such a lie. Remember when this started back in February and March? We were told how many people were dying. and that we had to flatten the curve, which doesn't mean cure, doesn't mean fix this. It means we just needed people to die at a slower rate than all of them coming into a hospital all at once. That's all flattening the curve means. That everyone doesn't die at the same time. Not that more people will die, not that less people will die. It's the same number of people are expected to die, just not all at once. That's flattening the curve. That's what we were told we needed to do for 15 days. Somewhere in that 15 days, the answer changed from we have to flatten the curve to we have to cure this. That you have to suffer this forever until people are safe. Which is just a stupid statement. It's just a stupid statement. It is a statement meant to maintain control and power via fear. And as I said earlier in the show, I oppose any group, individual that uses fear, intimidation, and or threats of physical violence to make people submit to something against their will. That includes Andrew Cuomo, with his dictatorial actions about COVID-19. There are better ways to protect our most at risk and allow our nation, our people, to live free and to have lives. So, Mavis, I believe the last that I had seen, even though I was sick, so I may have missed an update, is that we were in condition orange. And I'm going to try and see if I can find an answer. Where's the news? News. COVID. I don't see it at this moment. Now, I'm going to try and find it before the end of the show. And we're getting close to the end of the show. So we've been covering a lot of ground, folks. And by the way, I love you all. I thank you all for watching this. Not because you all agree with me. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. Not because you think I'm brilliant. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. But because you're paying attention, you're having a conversation, because these are important issues that are affecting all of our lives. And I thank you for giving me the opportunity to share this with you, and also that I'm getting the feedback from you guys. Jason from Bing says, excuse me. What do you think County Executive Garnar suggestion to stay home is doing on top of these guidelines he is suggesting red zone policy? I know County Executive Jason Garnar. I've known him for several years. I know all of the politicians in this region for a long, long time. By the way, my camera's about to die, so I'm going to switch in just a second to my backup camera in case you see the image look a little different. I don't think that Jason's an evil man, and I do not want to make it seem like I think he's an evil man. He is not. I don't think he's efficient in dealing with this crisis. I don't think he's standing up to Governor Cuomo in ways that would be most effective for the community. And I think he's absolutely wrong, both when he had his unofficial, official statement of the Operation Crush COVID, where he demanded that people be prisoners in their homes, which is illegal. I disagreed with that. I publicly said so. I will publicly say so again. And I say that his suggestion now to demand that people who are not sick, who do not present any kind of complications, must be locked in their homes as well, is wrong. He is doing more damage to the community and individuals, both in terms of fear and as well as economics, as well as health. He is doing more damage than he is trying to prevent. That is where I stand with that. Kurt says the city is screwed. Sort of. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if we're being honest, yeah, to a certain extent. Is it recoverable? Absolutely. But to recover, we have to have a realistic approach. We have to think this through. We have to think past the next news cycle. We have to think past what's going to happen next week, or maybe as far out as this election. We actually have to have a plan. We had the entire from March until September to figure out what are we going to do about COVID round 2. Because there is no cure, there is no vaccine. We knew that, and we knew it was coming back along with the flu. What was the plan that was given to the public to take care of that? From Governor Cuomo, from our county executive here, in this case, Jason Garnar, from Bob Wessler, from elected officials. Where was the plan? You can't tell me you didn't know it was coming back. We knew that in February. I did videos discussing in February that it was coming back. What is the plan? You gave us nothing. That's why we're doing knee-jerk things like locking down the city and the county and telling people not to go out, which is destroying more businesses that have already been destroyed and hurting the community more. I'm sorry, that is bad planning. That is dumb. And because of that, we are doing more harm than we are doing good. So, yeah, I don't agree with his policy. I think it's the worst one. What I would suggest, and I don't want people to think, oh, I have no suggestion here. I'll give you this suggestion. If you are someone who is at risk, you are in an at-risk category, which means you are 70 or above, maybe even 65 and above, and or you have a pre-existing condition that would make you susceptible to a disease affecting your lungs and your breathing, then you need to isolate, quarantine yourself, okay? If you are sick, you need to quarantine yourself. I was sick. I wasn't sure. I quarantined myself. I now know I'm not COVID positive. I can go back into the real world because that's what we do to resolve the problem and minimize the problem. It's not, let me get locked up. My neighbor has to lock themselves up because I have the flu and I didn't know it at the time. So my neighbor, the whole block should suddenly lock down and they should have no life and they should not be able to provide for their families for food and money to pay their bills because I have a cold. Potentially having COVID-19. That's just wrong. It's stupid. Excuse me, folks. Sorry about that. Mavis says, Jean says, sorry, not sorry, to Cuomo. Mavis mentions, they might have updated it. I haven't really been paying attention the last couple of days, so over COVID. Well, Mavis, to answer, one, Jean, I agree with you. And to Mavis, we shouldn't have to care. Again, if you're not at risk, if you're not in a high-risk group, don't do it. Hang on, I got a call coming in. Hello, this is Michael. You've reached No Soundbites Allowed. Who's this?
Hey, Mike, it's Jason.
Hey, Jason. Give me 1 second.
Yep.
I just wanted to mention that Gene says it's true that he, I believe, County Executive Garnar, can only have these mandates in place for a year. I'm not sure about that. Kurt mentions, wish I could stay for the rest. Hope to catch the other live show. Best of luck. Well, the show won't be on too much longer. We usually do about an hour and a half, so we're a little over on time. But thank you for being here, Kurt. Okay, Jason, go ahead.
Hey, yeah, I just wanted to, kind of get your opinion on, I had a conversation, with Bob Joseph on the local WMBF, and I was discussing about like the traditional media outlets versus pretty much, different alternative news and information, and basically what you do. And there's a lot of conversation that was covered there, and I just kind of wanted to get your opinion on that topic.
Oh yeah, I saw that and I heard it when Bob Joseph decided that he wanted to besmirch me and he wanted to discredit me I think his statement was, I'm picky about the stories that I cover, just like every news station in the world, just like his own program. He said that I have a bias, and that is absolutely obvious because I am a Republican political commentator, and that is well discussed and that's public knowledge. Of course I do. But unlike me, most media news stations don't reveal where their bias is. We have seen study after study after study for decades now showing that there is a predominant lean to the left, if not the far left, in news media. That's news television stations, print, even on the internet, where we see that they are predominantly left-leaning in their views, but they all say, including Bob Joseph, that, but we're neutral. No, you're not. If the first words out of your mouth on a talk news radio program is President Trump screwed up again today, that's a bias. If the first words out of your mouth is, Black Lives Matters is great, you're being biased. That is a bias. If you say, President Trump hasn't done anything right, President Trump is breaking the law by following the Constitution, then you have a bias. So when I hear, and I understand why WMBF, the Binghamton Now program with host Bob Joseph, I want to be very clear who I'm talking about here. If, by chance, they want to mention me, first, mention my name when you're going to mention me. 2, yeah, I'm paying attention to what you're saying. 3, be honest enough to tell people where you stand. You want to draw a comparison? Let's make a real comparison. I'm honest on what I stand for and what I believe in and what I'm doing. And I do it well. And I do my homework. I would hope that other news media would live up to that same example, even though they don't. So that's kind of where he got me. He pissed me off that day. He's lucky I did that. I was going to call into his show. He does a weekly show during the day. I was going to call in, and I probably would have wound up getting hung up on and banned for life because I was going to curse him out. He pissed me off. Still with me, Jason?
Yeah. No, I just, this is interesting. I just, like I said, I wanted to get your opinion on that. I had some other thoughts too. I was, basically trying to make a point that there is a change in the landscape. And there were certain things about the media that obviously really concerned me, especially when it comes to the solution to their problems. It looked to me, that there is massive pressure, being put now on politicians to basically, subsidize the failing media, as the old, old medias that were like the newspaper, the radio, and the old TV. And, the only thing I could think of is obviously any money that's coming from the government is going to favor whichever politicians basically signed off on that money going to the press.
Well, yeah, it's a basic format. Now, they have competition. They have not grown to adapt to that competition. And because technology has allowed us to have more information and more depth of information, they can no longer misrepresent facts. They can no longer misrepresent the positions and the facts like they used to. There was a time in America at one point where someone like Chris Coons would say, Amy Barrett is absolutely disqualified. She's no good. And no one would know what he's talking about. And they wouldn't be able to find out that what he's upset about is the fact that she doesn't want the Supreme Court to legislate from the bench, taking away the power of the people in Congress and in the presidential election. And most people wouldn't know that because they may not hear her actually speak to Congress. They wouldn't be able to read what her opening statement was. And all they would have is the news telling them that Chris Coons said she's disqualified. So the average person would think, well, then she must be disqualified. And see, that's the problem with the news media. They don't have that diversity, and they have a goal. They have an objective. They have a mission to make you believe what they're telling you. Now, I'd say 40 years ago, that wasn't the case. But we don't have Walter Cronkite around anymore. We don't have Edward Murray anymore. We don't have people who are up there, I'm talking about the major news media, who are out there saying, this is the news, here it is. Or political commentary that says, here's my point of view, here's all the facts, make up your own mind. This is what I believe. This is the conclusion I get to. And because the major news media can't compete with that, they want to destroy it. And they are trying their best to do so. And they're being very successful. By the way, before we go further, Mavis, I'm not sure what you said that we're in a yellow zone for the Binghamton Southern Tier community and that it's going to be upgraded to yellow. So I think you meant orange in one of those two spots. I'm not sure what you mean. But go ahead, Jason.
Yeah, I was going to say, one of the things that happened, as you were saying, is over 60 years ago, when the news used to just be pretty much just listing the facts and what was happening, and there wasn't as much opinion. But as social media did, come out, and as competition increased with cable and everything else over the time, you now see what people are defining as media is really it's all political commentary at this point. And I think one of the points that I made though is that when I looked at it being a new field and there's a benefit from it. It's just like you said, we know where you stand. We know your bias. We know exactly what perspective you're coming from. You're not trying to hide what you're doing.
No.
Meanwhile, every single one of these media, stations, they are constantly claiming that they are, non-biased, and they're just giving you, a straight, facts. And that I think to me is really.
I'll make it even more clear.
Yeah.
Ask Bob, and you can ask this of every local news media station and several of the national ones, why he will not address the Department of Education investigating Binghamton University for violations of the First Amendment and misrepresenting their positions to their students who are paying over $10,000 a year to go to the school. He knows the story. I sent him the story. I sent him the follow-up on the story. He is aware of it, like many of the news media in the local area are aware of it because I told them about it, and they won't report it. So how can he say, oh, independent news media isn't real news media? I broke the story. It's not the only story that I've broken. He doesn't want to touch it. Gee, whose bias really needs to be exposed to the public?
It absolutely is a huge story, and I don't think people, especially locally, understand the connections that Binghamton University has with this entire area on a political front.
Economically, people don't realize the economic front.
Well, they are the economic engine of this entire area, that's just a given, due to the fact of, how entrenched they are with the university in Binghamton. And that has been the economical blueprint pretty much for the last, I'd say even 20 years, very specifically with a lot of the, new development in the downtown. But as far as it goes from the political stance, it's just like the voter base that the university, tries to infuse into our area, where basically it's capturing, it's reshaping our council, members, and based upon the vote that's coming from the university, and even the district that you are in. I mean, technically, it's based on the university.
Yeah, it is. It has wide-reaching implications. It is a serious story. It is serious news. This is a serious investigation by the Department of Education, which may wind up, and it could cost Binghamton University their accreditation as a university. It will absolutely wind up in fines. It absolutely will wind up in having at least the president of Binghamton University, if not much of his administration, being fired. They will probably resign, but in fact, it means they're going to be fired. It could mean that state funding, like from Assemblyman Doug Smith, may be cut, which will affect the economy here. And it sends a signal to every single college in the nation, a warning about how they're treating conservatives and Republicans in their college campuses and the ability of students to be able to have free speech. It is a massive deal. It has huge implications at the local, state, and federal level. It involves tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions of dollars, potentially, by the time it's all said and done. And they don't want to touch it. Yeah, that's bias. And so when someone says in the major news media, Mike, you just don't know what you're doing and no one should pay attention, I refer to things like that and go, you're out of your mind. Do your job. If you do your job, I wouldn't have to. But Jason, I'm going to be finishing up in just a bit. I want to get to one comment and I'm going to be stopping. But was there anything else that you had wanted to say?
Yeah, well, I just wanted to say one thing too. Is just about your position and the fact that the Binghamton University and what they had done to shut down conservative voices and what that actually does to your own voice and your own opinion. Because the thing is that they don't want you to speak. They don't want your ideology or your ideas to be in our district. Instead, they indoctrinate individuals of a certain mindset on the university, and then they sent them out in our community to vote, in a way that is contradictory to everything that you believe in. And you know what, though, is that, again, they do not want to even give you the opportunity to be heard on the campus.
That's true. They do not. But that's all right, because I get to Binghamton University and speak on a regular basis, and I may be there again soon, speaking on the campus. And I do, if that does come through, I'll make people aware, because free speech is something we have to work at. Our rights and our freedoms are something that we have to work at, because there is always someone who wants to take away your power, your rights, your freedom, because they want it. So you always have to be aware, and you always have to be active. Otherwise, you lose it. Part of being active, by the way, is voting. And no matter who you vote for, get out and vote as long as you have a reason. Know what you are voting for. Don't just vote for a slogan or because you're part of a political party. But I do want to thank you for that, Jason.
All right. Yep. Have a good one, man.
You as well. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you. Bye.
All right, folks. As you can see, we always do love to have calls come in from 607-242-1582. Your voice always matters, whether it's a text or whether it's calling in, and you're always available. We're going to be ending this in just a moment, but I want to mention something, because we were talking about COVID, and we're talking about the protections of COVID. How do we protect each other? Tina DeBella off of Facebook mentioned something that I think is very important, and I want to read what she said here. I'm at risk with my pre-existing conditions. I choose to live my life, which I could work, and refuse the new normal. I believe it's choice of the person how to handle their own health. Prior to COVID, whenever I am sick, I